Interstellar. Blockbuster filmmaker Christopher Nolan's 2014 space epic imagines an all-too-likely future. A future that finds our planet on the verge of collapse, riddled with blight, famine, and eventual, inevitable suffocation. The film chronicles the last-ditch effort of a small crew of scientists led by a widowed pilot named Coop, who embark on an interplanetary, interdimensional journey to ensure humanity's survival. Following in the footsteps of the Lazarus missions, a NASA campaign so named for the last of Jesus' miracles, the resurrection of his departed disciple Lazarus, Coop and his team unknowingly attempt to do the same for humanity. Under the guise of the head of NASA, Dr. John Brand's monstrous lie that the existing life on Earth has a chance to survive, Coop sets out on his mission alongside John Brand's daughter Amelia, physicist Dr. Romilly, and geographer Dr. Doyle to find our species a new, inhabitable planet where the seeds of humanity can be planted long after life on Earth has expired. While Nolan's film chronicles that harrowing journey, what of those who came before? What of one of the progenitors of the Lazarus missions? Dr. Mann, the man Amelia had described as the best of humanity, the man who would eventually betray our protagonists in the icy canyons of the desolate planet he surveyed during the events of Nolan's film. What must it have been like for Mann on that cold, inhospitable planet? What form did the isolation that drove him to eventual madness actually take? Was his betrayal an impulsive error executed in a moment of weakness, as the character would have us believe? Or was his decision the calculated machinations of a selfish man desperate to ensure his own survival? Writer-director Christopher Nolan would attempt to answer those questions in a 7-page comic originally published in the December 2014 issue of Wired magazine. The short story, entitled Absolute Zero, was penned by Nolan himself and features artwork and colors from DC and Marvel comic book veterans Sean Murphy, a penciler known for his work on Image Comics' Tokyo Ghost and the DC Comics Black Label series Batman White Knight, and Matt Hollingsworth, who made his name on Neil Gaiman's limited series Eternals, as well as Matt Fraction and David Aja's groundbreaking Hawkeye series from 2012. The story in question takes place sometime after Mann's initial landing on the frozen waste of his planet, but long before the eventual arrival of Coop and his team. It begins with Mann awaking from cryosleep, frustrated and cynical, already a far cry from the charismatic leader Amelia and John Brand described during Nolan's film. As Mann ruminates on the hardships of cryosleep, revealing a subconscious understanding of time's slow, crushing passage, a disembodied narrator begins to posit a question: if darkness is only the absence of light. Mann follows the narrator's question with his own, a question directed at Kip, his robotic companion. I don't suppose this place has gotten any warmer. Kip answers with a succinct no. From there, the pair head out into Mann's planet, seeking a probe planted sometime long before. Mann with the futile hope that the probe has possibly detected some form of solid ground where he can establish a base as the narrator's question continues: if cold is only the absence of heat. As the pair journey, Mann asks Kip if he's made the data models he's asked for, and Kip challenges: yes, but I don't understand why you'd want hypothetical models for what we hope to find. Mann responds nonsensically: to know what we're looking for. With this brief couplet of dialogue, Nolan efficiently sets up the first hint at the premeditated nature of Mann's eventual transgression, as well as a relationship that's clearly become combative. It would appear that Kip's behavioral settings have been dialed up beyond the point of the machines featured in Nolan's film, Tars and Case. It's intimated that this was a conscious choice on behalf of the designers of Lazarus to help those on the mission deal with the isolation of their uninhabited worlds. While Tars and Case always defer to their human counterparts, Kip functions more as an equal partner, challenging Mann's pessimistic outlook to the point that Mann requests Kip dial back his personality. Rather than acquiescing, Kip reminds Mann that he can simply disable his behavioral setting at any time by simply uttering the word Bermondsey, exposing the artificial nature of their relationship and introducing a second, equally insidious layer to Mann's eventual betrayal. If he's going to enact his plan, he's going to have to go through Kip. The open animosity between the two is momentarily shelved as they happen upon the probe. For a moment, Mann's cynical facade drops at the anticipation of new data that could mean salvation, not for humanity, but for himself. His hopes are quickly dashed, however, as Kip efficiently and callously blows through the information in the blink of an eye, finding nothing of use to anyone. More frozen clouds, more ammonia, no surface. Mann wordlessly flies into a rage and begins smashing the file. Kip's verbal protestations turn physical as he attempts to stop Mann from destroying the vital research data. Mann orders Kip to release him, but the AI refuses, making the terms of his obedience quite clear with the threat: you want to order me, switch me off. Be alone. Mann responds to this statement with a glance far colder than anything found on his planet. At an impasse, he stomps away, back toward the base and toward his fateful sin. The story picks up the next morning, with Kip set to go through the futile motions of their mission, but Mann refuses. He's given up. He asks Kip if he's transmitted the previous day's data. Kip replies that he hasn't. Again, he asks for the false data models. Kip dutifully transmits them. As Mann mulls over the phony data, Kip exits the base and the narrator's question progresses: if silence is just the absence of sound. Mann passes the day alone in a dark corner of his utilitarian base, awaiting Kip's return. Kip steps through the door, and without pretense, Mann utters a single word: Bermondsey. Kip halts instantly, an empty shell. Mann speaks his name, searching for any errant sign of the artificial intelligence. There is none. His partner slain with a word, Mann steps past the machine and begins washing his hands, staring into his own reflection. The stage set for his betrayal as the narrator's question concludes. Then is good the absence of evil, or is evil the absence of good? This haunting question closes Nolan's equally haunting prologue, a marvel of depth and efficiency, arguably better served by the comic book medium than if it had actually been filmed. These 7 pages do everything a prologue and prequel needs to do, providing further context for Mann's horrible actions, while also positing a story that stands alone, namely the conflict between Mann and Kip, ingeniously positioning our eventual antagonist's only salvation, his artificial companion Kip, as the only obstacle to his nefarious, self-serving plot. This conflict raises the classic science fiction dilemma of what actually constitutes life. At what point does Kip's mimicry of a personality stop being mimicry and start being an actual personality? When Mann eventually enacts his plan, is he killing Kip, or is he merely turning off a cold, unfeeling machine? More broadly, the story also calls into question the nature of morality itself. Are good and evil active impulses to be sought after, or are they passive things that occur depending on the comfort or desperation of whatever arbitrary situation we find ourselves in? The story also cleverly provides vital context for Kip's near inaudible plea in the film before unwillingly killing Dr. Romilly.
Please don't make
In 7 short pages, Nolan, Murphy, and Hollingsworth managed to call all of this into question with Nolan's efficient script and dialogue alongside brilliant pencils from Murphy. Murphy uses thick, angular line work, effectively communicating the brutalist design of the spare accommodations of Mann's base, as well as the oppressive cold of his desolate, lonely world. The planet's harsh light is juxtaposed against the inky shadows of the base as well, mirroring the inner workings of Mann's increasingly disturbed mind. Hollingsworth's colors are muted yet striking and subtle. The final panel on the story's 3rd page, which illustrates one of the many endless chasms of Mann's world, is particularly arresting, finding the colorist adding impossible depth to one of Murphy's more basic pencil sketches using slight variations of a single solid color: blue, to illustrate how truly insignificant Mann and Kip are in comparison to their world. It's a panel that recalls one of Nolan's own striking shots from the actual film, Mann and Coop's physical struggle amongst the icy canyons of his planet. Absolute Zero is a truly fascinating peek at the world of Interstellar, a single film that can no doubt support an entire extended franchise, but has mercifully been allowed to stand on its own, a rarity in today's franchise-heavy cinematic world, but the standard for one of our last true big-budget auteurs. This unsettling short story is an absolute treat for any Christopher Nolan fan, one that will hopefully be preserved in a future collection of the director's work and not merely lost amongst the ephemera of the internet. After all, glances into the brilliant worlds of Christopher Nolan outside of the reels of his films are often too few and far between.